Dividend seated ETFs versus individual dividend stocks. Which builds wealth faster? Estimated runtime approximately 15 minutes. Cold open 00 to 045. Picture two investors. Both start with $10,000. Both want the same thing, dividend income that grows every year without them having to work for it. Investor A buys one dividend ETF and never touches it again. Investor B spends every weekend picking individual dividend stocks, tracking earnings calls, and rebalancing. 10 years later, who has more money? The honest answer is, it depends. And by the end of this video, you'll know exactly which one fits you. Not some generic best answer that YouTube gurus love to give. I'm your name. And today, we're breaking down dividend ETFs versus individual dividend stocks, diversification and effort versus control, and yield potential. Let's get into it. What we're actually comparing, 0.45 to 2. Before we compare, let's define both sides clearly. A dividend ETF is a single fund that holds a basket of dividend-paying companies, sometimes 100 stocks, sometimes 400 plus, and pays you a blended dividend from all of them. You buy one ticker and you instantly own a slice of every company inside it. Individual dividend stocks means you personally select companies. Think Coca-Cola, Johnson & Johnson, or PepsiCo, and build your own portfolio, stock by stock, same goal, dividend income and long-term growth. Completely different paths to get there. Diversification, the ETF Advantage, 2 to 415. Let's start with the ETF side because this is where the numbers are genuinely impressive right now. Take something like the Schwab US Dividend Equity ETF, ticker SCHD. It tracks an index of roughly 100 stocks screened for strong balance sheets, cash flow, and a long history of paying dividends. Right now, it's yielding somewhere around 3.4 to 3.8%, with an expense ratio of just 0.06%. That means on a $10,000 investment, you're paying about $6 a year in fees. That's almost nothing. Or look at the Vanguard High Dividend Yield ETF, VYM. It holds over 400 stocks and yields around 2.4 to 2.5%. Lower yield, but even broader diversification. You're basically immune to any single company blowing up. Here's the real advantage. If one company in that ETF cuts its dividend or even goes bankrupt, your portfolio barely feels it. It's one holding out of 100 or 400. That single stock might be less than 1% of your total position. Compare that to owning 5 individual dividend stocks. If one of those 5 cuts its dividend, which happens even to safe blue chips, you just lost 20% of your income stream overnight. That's the diversification math in a nutshell. ETFs spread the risk so thin that no single mistake can really hurt you. Control, the individual stock advantage, 415 to 645. Now here's where individual stocks fight back. Control. When you buy an ETF, you're accepting whatever the fund manager or index methodology decides. You don't get to say, I don't want exposure to this sector, or I think this company is a risk. You get the whole basket, good and bad. With individual stocks, you build exactly what you want. Want zero exposure to oil and gas? Skip it. Believe healthcare dividend payers are undervalued right now. Overweight them. You have full control over sector allocation, position sizing, and which companies actually earn your money. There's also a yield argument here. Some individual dividend aristocrats, companies with 25 plus years of consecutive dividend increases, can offer yields well above what a broad ETF gives you, especially if you buy them during a market dip when their yield is temporarily inflated. A skilled stock picker who buys quality companies at the right price can absolutely out-yield a plain diversified ETF. And there's a tax angle too. With individual stocks, you control exactly when you sell and realize a gain. With an ETF, you're at the mercy of the fund's internal turnover, and depending on the fund, some of that income can come as ordinary income rather than qualified dividends, which matters a lot at tax time. So control cuts both ways. More upside potential, but also more room to make a costly mistake. The effort equation, 6:45 to 9, this is the part most YouTube videos skip, and it's honestly the most important one for real people with real jobs and real lives. Running an ETF portfolio takes minutes a year. You buy, you reinvest dividends, maybe you rebalance once annually. That's it. The fund's index committee does the stock picking work for you, in deciding what qualifies, what gets removed, what gets added. Running an individual stock portfolio properly means reading quarterly earnings reports for every company you own, tracking payout ratios so you're not blindsided by a dividend cut, watching debt levels, cash flow, and management changes, rebalancing manually when one position gets too large, and making sell decisions, which are emotionally harder than buy decisions. If you own 15 or 20 individual stocks, that's a part-time research job. Multiply that by however many years you plan to hold, and if you're not genuinely interested in that process, the extra yield you might capture can easily get wiped out by one bad decision made from fatigue or overconfidence. There's actual research backing this up. Investors who trade individual stocks frequently tend to underperform the simple, boring index approach specifically because of behavioral mistakes, not because stock picking is impossible. So ask yourself honestly, do you enjoy this? Because if the process feels like a chore, you're statistically more likely to make an expensive, emotional decision at exactly the wrong moment. The hybrid funds worth knowing, 9 to 10:45. Quick but important detour. Not every dividend ETF plays it safe, like SCHD or VYM. Some funds chase much higher yields using strategies like covered calls. Funds like JEPI or JEPQ can show yields in the double digits, but that extra income usually comes at a cost, capped upside if the market rallies hard, and some of that yield can actually be return of capital rather than a true dividend, which changes how it's taxed and what it actually represents. The lesson here, whether you're picking ETFs or individual stocks, a high yield alone is never the full story. Always ask where the yield is coming from before you get excited about the number. So, which one actually builds wealth faster? 1045 to 1315. Here's the honest, non-clickbait answer. For the vast majority of investors, especially anyone with a portfolio under roughly $200,000, or anyone who isn't going to spend real time researching individual companies, a well-chosen dividend ETF will likely outperform a self-built portfolio on a risk-adjusted after-cost basis. Not because stock picking doesn't work, but because most people don't have the time, temperament, or discipline to execute it consistently over 10 or 20 years. But if you genuinely enjoy researching companies, if you have the time to actually track your holdings properly, and if you can stay disciplined without panic selling during a downturn, individual stocks give you a real shot at outperforming because you can concentrate capital in your highest conviction ideas instead of diluting it across hundreds of companies you don't care about. There's also a middle path a lot of experienced dividend investors land on eventually. Use a core ETF like SCHD or VIG as your foundation, maybe 70 to 80% of your dividend allocation, and then add 5 to 10 individual stocks you genuinely believe in and want to actively track. You get the safety net of diversification, plus the upside and engagement of stock picking without betting your entire retirement on either approach alone. Quick recap, 1315 to 14. Let's lock this in. Diversification, ETFs win. One bad company barely dents your income. Control and yield potential, individual stocks win if you know what you're doing. Effort, ETFs win by a mile. Stocks demand real ongoing work, wealth building speed. For most people, ETFs win on a risk-adjusted basis. For engaged, disciplined investors, individual stocks can win, but it's not guaranteed. Outrow/CTA 1400 to 1500. So the real question isn't which one is better. It's which one matches how much time and attention you're actually willing to give this. If that's a few minutes a year, an ETF like SCHD or VYM does the job beautifully. If you love digging into balance sheets and want more control over your income stream, individual dividend stocks can absolutely reward that effort. Drop a comment and tell me which side you're on, Team ETF or Team Stock Picker. And if you want, I'll break down my actual dividend portfolio in a future video so you can see exactly how I split between the two. If this helped you think through your own strategy, hit subscribe. I'm putting out a new video on dividend investing every week. See you in the next one.